I mean, whatever we got to do, right?
We're doing that thing that we got to do.
Which one's that?
That was when we start out playing actual play. Welcome, everybody. We're starting a brand new game right now, Girl by Moonlight, made by Andrew, who is here, which is super exciting. So that we all get to know all of you. Let's all say who we are and what our pronouns are and some things about us that we want to say before we start the game. So, Andrew, why don't you start since you're running the game?
Yeah, that's me. I'm Andrew Gillis. I designed this game called Girl by Moonlight about tragic magical girls. And I don't know, I'm a player of role-playing games from the Pacific Northwest who is on lots of Twitch shows and stuff. It's kind of my deal.
Nice.
Andy. Hi, my name's Andy.
Sorry.
What
are your pronouns?
What do you got?
I missed my pronouns.
No.
Now you have them.
Say that again. That was very quick.
Yeah, I use they, them pronouns.
All right. Thank you. Hi, my name's Andy Carrison. She, her pronouns are great in my world. Let's see. I could almost echo what Andrew said about playing games and being from the Pacific Northwest, except I don't actually do it on Twitch. Yeah.
Right now.
Don't tell me that. Strush, what do you got?
I was going to say, Andy, I have 13 episodes of Start Answer that say otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, folks. I'm Strush, he, him. I'm a gamer and game designer who also programs by daylight while gaming by moonlight. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You can usually find me on Twitter at StrashA, and I'm excited to be a magical girl. What about you, Sean?
You too. I'm very excited. I'm Sean Nittner, and we're playing a bunch of fun games on this channel. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just playing this game and playing other rad games. And I'm just like, I literally was walking today and I had to stop because I had this idea like manifesting in my head about this game, and like, I need to write this down. And it was delightful, and totally stopped everything I was doing. I was like listening to a book, an Audible, and walking, and I couldn't do any of that. I had to stop. So I'm super jazzed about this game.
Did you write it down?
I did. I wrote it down.
Okay.
I wrote it down right here. And I'm going to say it in a little bit.
Cool.
I use he, him pronouns, and yeah, I'm really excited about being a magical girl as well.
All right. So we've done some of the work in advance in terms of making a selection of the crew sheet that we're going to be playing with. So I have taken the liberty of putting it in Roll20 here as like a map, so we can draw on it and make selections and record stuff here. But first, we're going to be on this one, which is my sheet for the Leviathans. I don't know if y'all are all, some of you might be GMs and some of you might not be, and so I might be dragging you around or not, depending on your thing, but
let's see
over on this.
Let me see what
I do see the Leviathan sheet.
Yeah, I was joined as a player, so I'm going to rejoin. But luckily, I hadn't switched over the screen yet, so you all in Twitch land don't have to suffer for that. And I'll cut over now, and it'll be all fancy. There we go.
Aha, there we have it.
And so we have chosen On a Sea of Stars for our series playbook, which is all about, well, here, I'll read the blurb. On a Sea of Stars is about institutions and hope in the face of extinction. The protagonists are captive heroes forced to fight a slowly losing war against an overwhelming enemy, all while being alienated from the people they protect. They rely on the engines to stand a chance against their foes, and the engines, in turn, are fueled by their pilots' emotions and transcendent powers. And the engines are like big emotional robots. It's probably the best way I could describe them. And so that's kind of our launch point, and there's a bunch of stuff on here that pertains only to me, but what we need to look at as a group is this series of lists that we're going to be choosing from. So to create our crew, we are going to choose from the lists below.
Nice. So this is the point where I want to say an idea that I had. if that's okay, about this, because it'll affect choices on the list if people like this idea. And normally I have ideas that are like little kernels of ideas, like I think we should all be in a rock band, which I was saying earlier, and that's like it. But I had this idea, and it was bubbling in my head, and it's like it birthed like Athena and Zeus from Kronos' head, like just spat out. And so I just want to say it and see if it resonates at all. And if it doesn't, I will like do something else with it later, and that's totally cool. And if it does, maybe we can use bits or parts of it. So is it okay, Andrew, if I just like throw out a thing?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna get chewed up and
yeah, no, I expect it to. I mean, it might get tossed out too, but
yeah.
All right. So I had this idea that in the future we are unable to sustain human lives, human body lives. We cannot generate enough food or other necessary things to keep humans alive. However, as a result of that, as part of that, we discovered the ability to transfer consciousness into machines, but we found that we could not replicate that consciousness or create new ones, and that even without bodies, consciousness is still degraded over times. And so either because a consciousness would degrade, effectively age, or because it could be destroyed by being in a machine that was destroyed because they can't be duplicated or backed up. There's still a need to create new life and new consciousness through reproductive means. And so bodies exist still, but they are only used in these like limited capacities. And one thing a person will be put into a body for is to reproduce, so that more consciousnesses, more entities, more people can be made. And then the idea is that once that entity is born, then both the parents and the newborn themselves can then be transferred back out of bodies, so the bodies don't need to be fed or taken care of. They can be put in stasis. Another thing that can only be done with a body is pilot an engine. And so bodies are they are not typically available, but when you're in them because you have some duty that you have to perform. It's not your body, and often you don't necessarily have a lot of choice about what happens to that body. For instance, if you are chosen to reproduce, that's the function, that's why it's being done. And very powerful people might have bodies that they kind of justify the rationale of, well, I need this body for this, and they have the sway to do it. But the bodies don't really grow; they stay in stasis. So you might not get the same one every time. Anywho, so I had this idea, and I thought I would run it by all of you and see what you thought about this bodiless world where we would need them to pilot these big machines.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, was this prompted by the fact that that's one of the options in one of these lists up here?
Yeah, I saw that and I started thinking about it. Yeah, one of the list options is that we don't have bodies. Also, another list option is we don't have growth. And both of those sort of made me, I don't know, just started me thinking about this idea. So now that I have said it, I don't have nearly as much attachment to it. Like I could do a different thing with it, but I just wanted to say this idea and see what you all thought about it. And yeah, it's out there.
As long as we have enough people and bodies to interact with, because I think that a whole piece of the genre to me is about performing activities together, and it's a lot harder to do when one of you is like a 60-foot robot and one of you is like in a small dog-like robot or whatever it is that you're usually inhabiting. So like a lot of the usual tropes become like really badly stretched. So like maybe if our little military unit of pilots and or people that oversee us are by the nature of the whole function stuck inside the forms that we're in, I'm okay with that. How about you, Andy?
I'm not super excited about taking this whole cloth. I love a lot of the aspects and the pieces in there. However, I am way more interested in going through all the prompts for the series playbook, and you having offered this concept that you're excited about, seeing if any of those pieces emerge as we go through them. I really like procedurally generating the context in which we're going to exist.
That sounds great to me. Cool.
Cool. So we can kind of like back burner this, go through some of the stuff and see if
Well-
it maps well to the other options that we want to select.
That's what I would like to do. Does that feel good deal?
That sounds great to me.
Okay. Well, then we can just dive into picking from lists and kibitzing and whatever other terms we want to use here. And so I can read them out, or we can take turns reading out the lists.
Which do you prefer?
I think
Why don't we
read
take
them.
turns?
Okay, that sounds fun. Who do you want to go first? I volunteer.
Yeah.
I volunteer for tribute. All right. Cool. Do you want me to look at the nature of the darkness, or where do you want me to start?
So yeah, we're going to start at the top left and go down the first column, and then we're going to go to roles and go down the second column.
So just for everyone watching, super briefly, as you may know, this is obviously a Hack of Blades in the Dark. And I'm going to just say this one real quick prompt. One of the things that is established as part of the game is that all of us are fighting a force called the Darkness. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. It'll take different forms depending on which series we go to, which is kind of like the crew analog for those with familiarity with Blades. But yeah, the thing that is always true is that we are always playing as some kind of like magical, we're all magical girls, whether or not we're actually girls specifically aside. And we're all pitched in some kind of, fight against darkness, however it is that manifests.
All right, so let's start with the nature of the darkness. So some of the prompts here are: a world of ghosts and demons, a storm of psychic energy, ancient gods reawoken, guardians of the natural order, a vast, all-consuming organism, or our basest fears made manifest.
Andrew, one of the things that you did here that I thought was so cool was basically make an option to like play Blades in the Dark while playing a game that's not Blades in the Dark, like that you
Yes.
made like that first option. I mean, you talked about it before, but it's so cool that there's like you can pick that first thing and not that
we could play in Duskfall if we wanted to. We could be magical girls in Duskfall with this series that exists.
Okay,
We
okay.
could be people who fight like leviathans, like the leviathans from Blades in the Dark, it would be like hulls, as I imagine it. You would have some kind of like cool hulls that are like that have ghosts in them, and those are the like things that haunt and imbue them with emotion. And then you go and like punch giant demonic sea monsters.
Nerd.
We could do it. I don't know. It would be fun. Think about it.
It could also
So-
be a non-Duskfall city that's being assaulted by abominations from the wastes that are generated when ghosts devour each other over hundreds of years, turning into some sort of monstrosities.
Exactly right. Like,
right.
Yeah, you could go out into the Deadlands.
but we could totally set this in the
Washa,
show.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yes,
Are there
That is-
any?
emphatically, it's there as a tribute to Blades, which I love. So it does.
Mhm, mhm. Is there anything here that people very strongly loathe or are really drawn to?
There's nothing that I loathe.
Okay.
I like the idea of the thing that is haunting us having sentience, even if it's an alien sort of sentience. Natural disasters have a sort of nihilistic feel to it. Like you can't like argue with the hurricane. Like it's just gonna destroy everything.
Cannot be reasoned with.
Sean,
Yeah.
as Pacific Rim has taught us, you can fight the hurricane. You can win.
Well, you can fight the hurricane for sure, but you just can't like have a sit down with the hurricane.
You cannot
can't.
engage it in rhetorical discourse.
Right, but you could have a sit down with ancient gods reawoken. Maybe you could. Who knows? Maybe.
So,
Okay. So to me, the ones like the ancient gods and our basest fears made manifest resonate a little stronger than things like a storm of psychic energy. Well, you might build like a storm of psychic energy. But those sorts of things where I feel like there is a intelligence, even if it's an alien intelligence that doesn't value us more than, someone might value an organism like an ant that if somebody doesn't care about ants, some people do, but some people are like fine.
Sure. So, do I hear you saying that you are interested in something that has air quotes a face
Mm-hmm.
to talk to?
Yeah.
Perhaps is that kind of the
or
idea?
that it's at least conceivably talkable to. Maybe it's not like, you know, we're like chatting each other up on comlinks every day, but that we have seen a face or a face could be seen in the future.
It has actions and design rather than just an unknowable drive, and we happen to be in the way.
Right. It's not just an elemental force.
Okay,
Great.
I'm done with that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, all of these are certainly designed with the idea in mind that there's at least some kernel of like agency to them. That said, there are some options that really do push that away down the like further down the list. There's one about how like the leviathans we just happen to be in their path and they're going somewhere else.
Right.
There's stuff like that that can be played into. So yeah, the fact that we want it to be something that's a bit more personal is what I'm hearing here. That there's like,
sentient.
yeah.
So let me just test and see. Are you guys interested in some sort of like ancient gods? Do you want like when it says a vast all-consuming organism? My brain is going to something like StarCraft, where we've got like the
Zerg.
Zerg.
The Zerg.
So like an all-consuming organism is like some sort of hive creature with like a hive sentience at the core of it, like a you know.
Sure.
I mean, huge, space-worthy, whatever. But like,
sure. Well, I
that's a
mean,
possibility.
but First Contact taught us that even the Borg can have a personality, or you know, Voyager as well. So
and there's room to twist these as far as we want to as well, right? Like when we say, oh yeah, there's like a vast all-consuming organism, but that could have like some weird cult of people associated with it who need to like feed this thing and maintain it, and it's like their god or whatever that they pay homage to, and they send out these leviathans to like gather sustenance for it. In as much as ancient gods reawoken might also have a cult, right? Like we can play with these forms and swing out from them to have an idea, right? These can be kernels of something else. So feel free to interpret as, you know,
As our experiences and personal knowledge suggests.
I mean, that said, do you guys like the idea of some weird cult of people with this collection of horrifying, enormous monsters that they worship and need to feed?
Yeah, I do like that idea.
Because that just came to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just saying, like that sounded pretty cool, actually.
I'm into that. I'm also into if there are ancient gods, they could easily be some sort of, I don't want to call it duplicates, but maybe like dark reflections of ourselves, where they can assume, like they can fuse and assume the form of like giant monsters that attack us too, the same way that we fuse with our engines to fight them.
Right, that they're like piloting something, right? These creatures that come forth.
Yeah, like so if there is some Jupiter equivalent on the opposing side, they may have a cult and they may be able to like exit their engine form and walk amongst their cult doing whatever. But like then when they become these like huge beasts, that's it gives kind of like a weird reflection, almost like we're either using ancient tech that's related to it or whatever. Those are kind of the two things I'm into. How are you guys feeling? There's a lot of nodding from Andy.
Baffled nodding.
If anybody does have video on, Andy is nodding excitedly.
All sounds great. The idea. Go ahead, John.
No. You. I've been talking. You say good words.
I'll give it a go. I'm pretty excited about the idea of that ancient gods reawoken, and I hear you, Josh, talking about like this mirrored like pantheon, almost like anti-pantheon, and that's the very explicit mirroring is really exciting. I find that delightful. Let's not be subtle about what's going on here. There's no need, right? Like,
and it's very true to form for the kinds of media that we're reflecting as well. That like, you know, there's like the bad team, but you guys are the good team, and then there's the bad team. Like how in Sailor Moon, there's all the like people named after rocks that they fight, you know, one by one.
Cool. I can only think of Team Rocket.
But yeah, exactly, right? Like so much of this media includes this idea of like there's us and then there's the like direct rival figures.
Right. And I'm very excited about the idea that whatever tools we have are very tightly connected, whether they're the exact same or they're derived from or they're a corrupted version of, but that it's not like it just so happens that we have engines and they have big giant leviathans. Like, how would that ever happen? That there's a link between the two of them really excites me.
Cool. Okay, so we'll start with Ancient Gods Reawoken as our first prompt that we're selecting.
I'm gonna totally take the. There we go.
And yeah, feel free to like draw on this. Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
gonna, I got it. I'm gonna do an actual good line
Because the sheet is down on the like map layer, so you won't be able
boom.
to.
There we go.
I'm not seeing it.
Nor I.
Nope.
Yeah, you just.
I
did,
saw
like,
the line you drew.
invisible
first.
ink.
It was a little squiggly.
All right.
Quick
hang on a
stuff.
second.
Ooh,
There's-
stuff it up next to a light bulb.
A maroon line just showed up and then disappeared immediately.
Yes, we had
Yeah,
a great maroon line.
That's what that was.
So it might have just taken a minute to update
There we go.
or whatever.
It'll show up again.
It'll
I
show up. Sure.
Yeah, we just have to
There we
give
go.
it its time.
Ta-da!
Nice, excellent.
Okay.
Chat, can you see any of this text? Like, I tried to zoom it so that it would all fit on the screen. I suspect it's probably too small to read. I don't know. I'm trying to.
We can go like paragraph by paragraph or like section by section too, Sean. So if you want
Yeah.
to zoom in and just encompass just that section,
Hey, John.
it's fine with me. Okay, well I'll read the next one. So that's like kind of the antagonism generally is what we've established with like the darkness, like where, what is this thing that we're contending with? But the Leviathans themselves are kind of like a subcategory of that. So there will be these ancient reawoken gods, which may or may not map one-to-one with the Leviathans themselves that we'll be fighting. So the Leviathans can be massive demonic sea monsters, spacefaring cephalopods, cyclopean mechanical horrors, a hive of colossal insectoid mutants, mountainous perversions of nature, or blind-eyed subterranean abominations.
Perversions of nature. Yeah.
Ooh, tell us about this, Andy.
Well, if we have ancient gods reawoken, there's this really lovely thing about perversion of nature. If we're looking at pushing against like this overt and explicit mirroring, and I like animals a whole lot.
Oh,
As
so they
ever.
have, like they've got some animal like features, but twisted.
Sure,
Okay.
or in like even
Okay.
if you're looking at the idea of perversions of nature, like nature can also be forces and concepts pretty like very readily. You can zoom out to it being elemental in
So
scope
like the
or
weather or the earth itself or
yeah.
Yeah.
And I never want to meet the gravity god, but go on.
Yeah. Well, and perversions of nature really scream to me like, which is something that I said in our sort of prior when we were talking about it. I love the idea that we're complicit in this, like that this isn't just shucky darn, like that this is that
we somehow made this bad thing happen.
Made this bad thing happen, and perversions of nature just strike me very strongly as this could very well be a thing we did to ourselves, or we started it and it's gotten much worse. We did a thing and that unlocked something very bad, and now
presumably it reawoke these gods.
It reawoke these
Sure.
gods, exactly. But it wasn't just coincidence,
I like the idea that these perversions of nature, since these gods were like from a before time and there was this big gap, it's like nature has gone and changed and is how we know it now. And this is the equivalent of them like being like, oh yeah, we just have fucking dinosaurs because we're from back when there were dinosaurs, right? Like all of this stuff happened. And that would be like our analog to our world, is it just that someone was just like, bing, dinosaurs, because that's the animals I know. I don't know. I'm an ancient god, right? Like that they have this totally alien biome that they know of from way back before.
Yeah.
Or from this like other place that they...
Yes.
Okay, cool. So mountainous perversions of nature is what we're going with. It sounds like everyone's nodding and smiling. So
I heard 3 people agree, so I just underlined it.
Okay.
Yep.
great. Andy, would you like to read the next section?
Oh, goodness. Sure, let's see what I can mispronunciate. One act of hubris brought this doom upon us. An ancient king shattered the gates of death. Our first attempt at interstellar travel. Casting signals across all realities. Meddling with time. Harnessing a forbidden source of power. Trespassing in their domains. And now...
So many good ones there.
I'm kind of into the last 2.
The that we like went into the god place and
Well, I mean,
accidentally woke them up, or that we like tried to.
there was I mean, we have these engines, and presumably, I don't know that we built the engines. We may have found them as remnants of some of this ancient god war or whatever. So we may have been in like a neutral zone as humans and not realized it. And once we like tried expanding past our resources,
Yeah.
they could have been like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Right, so like their domain is not a physical space, but a like jurisdictional space where it's like, oh no, only we have these things. What are you guys
Right.
doing?
And similarly, I'm sorry, I'm still a little bit tied to Sean's idea, just a little bit at least. And I want to say that if as a society we are short on power, looking for alternate sources of energy, like we could have easily reached into like 0 point energy, right? Like the background constant of the universe. And if we depleted it or changed it, and they believe it belongs to them and may have brought their wrath upon us. So in order for us to like feed ourselves and power our engines, we're using a power source that is also the cause of the war.
Yeah, I dig that a lot. I can see a lore wrapper around this of like the Earth or wherever we came from. Like we were given like a timeout or like a safety. Like you were protected. Like we set you aside from all the cataclysmic forces of the universe so that you could have a safe world. And you just couldn't stay in the garden. You know, you couldn't.
Squandered.
Yeah, and you poked the bear and had to pierce the realities. I dig that a lot. I dig that a lot. Like we might have been sort of safe if we had just been content with the reality that we had, or the power source that we had. To me, that casting across realities and harnessing a forbidden source of power are very close in that regard. Like I could see either one sort of being that thing, but I do like the idea of power because that's a very like tangible thing. Like we need to fuel these things.
We need to keep the lights on.
Yeah,
as it were.
Right. It's less smacks of like, oh, curiosity, like we're star travelers. It's more like this is the thing we actually needed just to fuel stuff.
Certainly the implication with all of these is that human beings were complicit in their own undoing.
Yeah.
Every time.
And that those institutions that did all this shit will still exist while we are playing, right? Those will be now the last thing holding humanity together will be like these self-same organizations or institutions or people.
I think the power to fuel Bitcoin, which is insane, just became all consuming. Right now, somebody told me ridiculous statistics about the amount of energy consumed by Bitcoin and by people digging for more Bitcoin, farming Bitcoin, and the electricity and the cooling.
The Chinese government outlawed them for that very reason because they are massively wasteful. They also like destroy computer components, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, like we see all these kinds of behaviors in real life human society, right?
Yeah, none of this is new.
So are you guys excited about this? Do any or all of these sound good?
I mean, I think you tapped on forbidden source of power, and I think that's
Is that the one y'all want to go with? Great.
Yeah. Andy, does that excite you?
Yeah, totally. I think that's lovely. I really, if I had a favorite, it's trespassing, because I like that it's quite evocative and less concrete. But let's go with the concrete, which is the harnessing of a forbidden source of power. I think that really suits what we're on about, and I don't think that they exist in conflict.
Right. I feel like that forbidden source of power could very much be seen as a trespass onto like taking something that wasn't ours.
Yeah, absolutely. We exited our lane and are shockingly greedy and sans gratitude and have no sense of time or responsibility to the future.
Right. Yeah, because you know that if we found like a crazy source of power or energy, like we would never think twice about just. Well, somebody would think twice, but we would still just consume it.
History has shown us that yes, absolutely yes, we will do that.
There might be people who think twice, but we, as a society,
but they don't get heated.
I'm gonna read a thing.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please do.
Why the leviathans come to reclaim something we stole, to consume minds and bodies, to silence our civilization, to entrap and contain us, to tear down our great works, or because we are in their path. so many good things.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a really clear. There's a clear line that just runs through to reclaim something we stole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's like the really straightforward choice
Yep.
here. But if we want to
I could see
take
them
it
being
more abstract, we can get.
I could see these gods feeling not just to reclaim what we took, but having the desire to punish. There's a punitive
exactly.
act, and to
Has to go beyond
silence
that.
our civilization. Like, it's not just enough to say, like, give us, nope, that's mine, give it back. It's like, I'm going to punish you for taking it and silence your civilization.
Yeah, we will make sure that you can never ever do this again.
Yeah.
And also, maybe I'm just interested in body horror, which is so weird because I never am. Like, normally, movies, I'm not at all interested in it, but the idea of consuming our minds and bodies also, if in fact bodies are a precious resource or are scarce.
I mean,
of them.
I think everyone experiences a scarcity of bodies, Sean, because you only have one and you can't get another. So,
well, and I think, at least the idea that I was sort of pitching, you don't even have one. There's not even a 1-to-1 ratio of bodies to people. So, making that extra pressure. So, but like, all of those sound really cool to me.
So there are many carrots, and you have to choose which carrot to chase.
One stick.
I am really loving the idea of silencing our civilization in how it juxtaposes with the idea of these perversions of nature, and that nature is chaotic and in motion. And that, like, stillness and silence is sort of a deeply final death. I mean, yell it.
I'm down with this.
Yeah, I think that's
That
really
sounds
smart.
Suitably metal. let us put it on the list. Okay, so they're going to silence our civilization. It's nice of them.
Too rowdy, too loud.
So, Strash, I guess you're up again.
The last bastion of humanity. Choose one or two. An isolated city-state. An ancient fortress, quarantined and sealed. Rebellion and strife. Oh, wait. No, it is. Rebellion and strife. Law and order. A mobile bunker.
So, yeah, some of these are like direct physical descriptions, and then some of them are qualifiers for the other, so we can mix and match.
Yeah.
So it could be like an ancient fortress with rebellion and strife, or an isolated city-state that is quarantined and sealed, or etc. So, or it could be an isolated city-state that's a mobile bunker.
So one of the things we haven't really talked at all about is a sense of the physicality of this. Are we on a planet in a spaceship? Is it the future? Is it the past? Is it like any of those kind of details? Which I don't think we need to, but I don't know if anyone has ideas that they've been thinking about in their head that they would like to see.
Because there's equally room for it to be like sci-fi with like we're piloting robots. It could be like we said, it could be Duskfall style, like Victorian era weird technology stuff. It could be more of like a medieval vibe, or a strange mix of those concepts, right? Like, those things are all blendable. So I don't have a particular thing I'm feeling, except maybe just that, and I think this will happen naturally, just that whichever one of those it is, that it's weird. That we not do like a traditional sci-fi mecha setting, or a traditional, like fantasy setting or whatever.
Sure. Run it through a different lens.
Yeah, exactly. We like twist it.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that the idea of an ancient fortress is also compelling, and all of the forgotten things, and harkening back to the idea of reawakening old gods.
Right, that we have fallen back on some thing that was out of use, and we were like, why would we need this weird magic fortress? And that's like, oh, that's why. Okay.
Right.
That in the minute resonates. I don't know if me saying that offers anybody opinions that they then develop.
Well, I was thinking about ancient fortress as well. That sang to me. I'm still not sure. It's hard for me. I'm still not sure whether we're waving flags in the wind or we're cruising through space. And I don't know why that particular little like whether we're on Earth, whether we're on a planet, if there's atmosphere or space or both. I mean, those two aren't exclusive, but for me, that's like my gears are grinding a little bit and not knowing.
Mhm.
All right, let's pick one. Traditionally, most of this media is actually about 50-50 because you've got like things like Die Buster, which is very much in space, and you have things like
Like Vision of Escaflowne is like
that's a big one.
counterpoint mecha for me that is like starts the magical girl genre a little bit.
What's the Clemp show with the three girls that go to a fantastical land and get
Magic
giant
Knights
mecha?
Rare.
Yes, classic.
Yeah, and it's very the framing of that is almost like they're in like a D&D style like
Yes.
role-playing game almost. They're like they like power up and stuff. It's very inspired by that stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a huge range of different things that changes stuff.
So
like,
I'm sorry.
Mecha is an enormous genre, like category. It's not really a genre, but like
Right.
yeah, there's a huge range of possibilities in terms of traditional stuff.
You guys feeling atmosphere or space? I could go either.
Because if it's in space, someone's gonna have to like eject from a thing at some point and be in like a pod, and there's the whole like your limited air supply, space horror stuff could come up.
Right.
Sure. If
Do you the leviathans are mountainous perversions of nature. If we did space, I mean, I know we can make anything work, but if we were in space, Andy, do you feel like those natural elements, perhaps weather or climate or anything like that, those aren't typically found in space? Not to say we couldn't have space storms, but do you feel like that there's a place for those natural elements out in a vacuum, or would you rather have some earth on which can shake?
Gotcha. Sure. I don't feel like things being set in a outside of a terrestrial setting denies a lot of those pieces, though I think it might make it a little bit harder, or the scale changes, which is really great, or it's even stranger. Like, what does it look like when you have weather? Like these scions of weather in space. Like, of course they're there. Of course they're mad. They don't actually want to be there. Like, the planet's gone. It happened to have gotten blown up. Like, there's just the moon now. Like, that sounds pretty great. No.
On the other hand, I am kind of like, as we're talking, I was 100% on board with Sean's like cyber AI transfer body consciousness kind of idea, but at the same time, magical girls with like the whole like knight motif and armor and like the whole like, I don't know.
You mentioned flags flapping in the wind, which to me is
Yeah.
a very like chivalrous image.
Yeah. Like, and there is kind of an echo of like, if we're fighting a war using ancient tech, we could easily be like almost even Arturian knights, where our engines are named things like Galahad and Percival. But I don't know. It's I don't know. It's grown on me.
I like the idea of having come back to that little line of like flags flapping in the wind, like that image. It really strikes me, and I'm excited about that.
That's what I thought. That's the image that hit me when I saw Ancient Fortress. I was like, it's just these banners flapping, like that we rode to, we flew into. It doesn't matter how we got there, but
and that weirdly we have a bunch of like modern or even like sci-fi tech, but have had to like retreat from our civilization and be in this ancient thing. And
well, if we take
old stuff,
my reference to this is Robotech. I'm sure there's tons of others that have done this, but if we take like the Robotech idea of like our machines are powered by protocol, but like the Invid eat the protocol and they like know where it is, that if we use our current tech, the gods know all about it. And so we're sort of forced to use this older tech that doesn't tap into the new power. We still use the new power because it's the only way that we have like enough to fight. But for daily living kind of things, we try
to go and fight. We can't use this power we stole from them. We have to fall back on this ancient like magic stuff.
Yeah.
That we don't fully understand. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have this weird juxtaposition of high tech or advanced technology that is powered by a source that angers the gods, and an ancient but unknown but less known technology that we've sort of fallen back to. So even the tools that we have might be
they're kind of opaque to us.
right. I mean, like
we're
Mhm.
discovering
these engines are emotional, right? Like they're not always going to agree. They're not just machines that we get into. They have feelings, and we don't necessarily understand those feelings. So I like the idea that like,
and generally that tension also has to do with like the institutions really not giving a shit about that and seeing it only as an impediment, whereas the protagonists that you're playing actually want to form bonds with the engines and connect with them and engage with them on an emotional level. So cool. Yes, this all maps great.
Great.
yeah.
So what does that mean in terms of our picks here? We know we want Ancient Fortress.
Yeah.
Does Rebellion and Strife feel like the thing? And maybe it doesn't to y'all. What were you about to say, Sean?
Well, I was about to say, I really like the idea of Rebellion and Strife or Law and Order, because either one I can imagine as the institution, kind of fucking it all up. I don't have a better word for it, but the institution
not being able to maintain law and order, and
exactly.
Like
so
Battlestar Galactica kind of tension, where it's like, cool, we've got all the last humans, and like politics is still happening, and we don't.
Right. Where they're well, to them. So I'm interested in Law and Order and the idea of to the people in power, those things that we all know are not important are still considered important. Otherwise, I would say I'm totally interested in Rebellion and Strife because we like live in a basically war state. It sounds like where we know we're sort of being hunted at all times, and that creates a lot of fear and irresponsible actions as well. So I like those both a lot.
And we're trapped. Everyone's like in one space, and it is a bit of a pressure cooker scenario in that sense. We're all,
especially if we didn't all like each other, which go figure how that could possibly happen. Josh, do you have a bastion that speaks to you?
I'm good. I think you guys are saying things that I agree with, so I'm
cool.
Pulling Andy and nod ferociously.
Yeah.
Ferocious nodding. Okay, cool. So we're doing.
I think we're still uncertain about whether
we know we're in Ancient
Rebellion
Fortress.
Great.
Or Strife or Law and Order.
So then here's the question. With Rebellion and Strife in contrast to Law and Order, what are we more excited about? The part where there's like all this like lockstep that you see a bunch of friction occurring under the surface, or do you want all of that friction to be more overt? When I think about the Rebellion and Strife, I think a lot about how we were just talking about these dual sources of energy and how they exist in conflict. And so you inevitably have like when limited resources, because guess what? We're not a post-scarcity society unless somehow we've decided we are. Doesn't sound like it.
Doesn't sound like it.
So there's going to be inherent some version of inequity and lots of intersections of inequity. So there's going to be internal strife within that bastion, which I'm always into.
To my mind, the distinction between those two is if we pick Law and Order, it hasn't boiled over yet. If we pick Rebellion and Strife, it is in the process of boiling over or has already boiled over, and there's like weird like faction stuff happening inside of it.
You've got me totally sold. Rebellion and Strife all the way.
Okay, cool. So
I want us to be part of the institution that has already been bucked.
It's like we're part of embattled or already on the outs or whatever.
Right. Like we are, the institution that gives us the engines, that sends us out to fight their wars. The people have already rejected it, but they can't entirely. They can't overthrow it, but they have.
But they're like out of favor, and there's like a ruling political faction that isn't them, but the institutions used to be in charge and have been recently supplanted, and so now there's that tension that we're engaged with as well.
Then we have the delicious question of like, who do we side with? The people that presumably are giving us the tools with which we need to fight the leviathans, or the
like voice of the people, which we know might also be kind of wrong a lot of the time, but is also like as a moral authority.
Yes,
potentially, if we believe in democracy or whatever else. Great.
Can I pitch real quickly, Sean? I would be interested to see maybe that happen during the game, rather than have happened and us dealing with the aftermath. Is that a thing that you might be down for? Because I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think that if it's already been decided, we're playing a very different kind of position.
Yeah, you want to play through it, Strash, rather than
Yeah, or have it be a major theme, like where the rebellion and the overthrow is happening.
Mhm.
This is not a must. This is just a suggestion. I'm throwing it out there. If people
No,
are like,
I think there's lots of fun places to play around this, and I think Andrew put it very well. Is do we want to see the corruption of a legal system that is devouring itself, and then watch wherever that goes, whether that turns into rebellion and strife, or whether it turns into a dictatorship that's awful, or where that goes, or do we want to play it around that, like, that's already been rejected? And yeah, I mean, I think both would be very cool. I think we've got the same idea about what the political structure is doing. It's just a point in time that we want to pick around it.
Sure.
any preferences?
My go ahead.
no, please.
Sure. My preference is in wanting to defer to your stoke, Sean, and your interest, Strash, in not being already like down that path. Is when we hit the play button, is like it is happening now, right? Like it's very early stages of this thing that is that we've all decided that we're interested in, like is also happening as we figure ourselves out and what the space looks like.
I have a recommendation given how we're talking about these things and that they feel like either option feels almost equivalent.
Yeah.
Is that we just pick something else entirely, because we're all excited about having that thing happen. Let's just pick like Quarantine and Sealed or something.
Great.
And just like because that will generate.
We don't need to select that line to pick that
Yeah.
thing, because we've already sort of picked it internally, no matter what.
Yeah, and so yeah,
Cool.
that's how I feel about it, and also just to like stir this conversation because it has gotten very
Tight.
set and entrenched. Let's just say, okay, well, what about Quarantine and Sealed? Does that interest people at all? How do you feel about that? What if our whole society were structured in this way that people are like isolated from each other or from specific aspects of the society, like all of this
Or we're
science
locked,
stuff or weird magic stuff is
or what if
sanctioned away?
what if we're locked into big cities? So there is this feeling of a pressure cooker where the enemies are, or the scary things are on the outside, and we're sort of on the inside where it's like safer.
Yeah, like we could lean into that element, and then that will give us either Law and Order or Rebellion and Strife as outcomes to this as yet uncertain, like
Great.
boiling point kind of crisis.
Cool. So isolated city state, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Isolated City State Ancient Fortress is what we're doing now.
Nice.
Sounds
Super
of it.
good. Nice redirection, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good job.
That was some good GM food right there. And it allowed Strash to make one line, which
is
Ooh.
the visual, the aesthetics, we got to consider.
The-
Actually, Strash, I'm sorry,
One
could you leave a
is-
small space between those two lines?
Absolutely.
They're two separate entry. No, it's fine. So I guess it's my turn to talk again with the prompt, what is held to be sacred? And here we pick one or two things from this list. And our options of what is held to be sacred by the society that we are in are order, strength, hierarchy, obedience, edifices, organizations, hatred, and sacrifice.
Oh, there's too many good choices here.
Such good stuff.
Who doesn't love a little bit of hierarchy? Hey, it's great.
Right.
And of course, yes, all of these things are terrible. And yes, that is the point. Our society is embattled and desperate and has fallen back on a lot of the worst parts of human organization, as I see them as the designer here. So that the society is always kind of going to be a little bit at very best, it's the whole state of emergency thing that just forever.
Yeah.
Maybe at one point it was nice and aspirational. They were like, yeah, it's a state of emergency, it's going to go away. And now they're just like, this is just what it is. It's been this way for 20 years.
And the way we've described our society thus far, it strikes me that if they were ever, if the leviathans were defeated and everything was great, they would not turn into a utopian society. There would still be so much horrors within it.
We've been very cynical in all of our descriptions thus far.
Yeah, so it doesn't strike me as I'm really drawn towards obedience and strength as being sacred. I mean, strength is a very obvious one. It's just like we're fighting, and the better the fighter you are, the more valued you are, right?
And like strength can also be the like strength to endure things, right? The,
absolutely,
like,
it's this
posterity
resilience and
stuff
whatnot.
can come from that.
And so I could see very easily how the society could glorify that and just say like, well, if we didn't have strength, if we weren't strong, if we weren't resilient, they would just crush us and we'd be no more. That's the only reason why we're alive.
And clearly, like, because we are alive, therefore we must be strong. It's one of these like
it's totally self-fulfilling, and you doesn't matter how much you argue it. If somebody believes it in as a faith, as an object of faith, it's going to be very, very hard to ever dissuade them of that ideal. And then obedience really strikes me as something that is basically, as part of our previous discussion, part of our talking about law and order and whatnot, the idea that the thought, and this also could be hierarchy really, but the thought that it's only by following these rules. Maybe we found some ancient texts as part of this ancient fortress, right? Maybe we found some of these rules that are like, you must follow these things, and these rules of life are, we know they're unfair, we know they're wrong, but or maybe it's just that following the will of the political leaders. But whatever it is that it's only through following these perhaps arbitrary rules or self-serving rules even that we that we'll survive. So those two I'm excited about. But there's nothing on that list that I don't think is cool. So I those are my two exciting interpretations of those two, I should say.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's lots of room to.
I'm going to toss one out. I like strength, but I feel like particularly with the motifs of rebellion, order being held sacred is a little weird. I think your pitch is pretty good, though. So the thing that I would suggest as a perhaps secondary is sacrifice. Because if you have a society that is packed into a location, and you have some people that are stronger or more important than others, a sacrifice is a big deal, and ritualizing that and kind of like internalizing it is I mean, it's awful. It forces like the people who are least able to give up the most, but it kind of produces a social structure that is sort of well charged for rebellion, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because people have given things up and have been virtuous, but it's deeply unfulfilling as a practice because you don't get anything back from it.
Right. Well, and you're probably promised a lot back from it, right? Like,
well, you're promised that this will end.
Sure.
And it just doesn't, right?
And, yeah. I was just reading this book, Paris Noir, which is about the experience of expatriate Black people in France, and not just it talks a lot about Black people in France, but specifically African American people in France. And it starts at World War I with like this great promise of like fight in the war and racism won't be so bad, and the result was no, racism got worse. This idea that is coming back. So this notion that the people who have the least are asked to do the most, and then at the end, after they've done that, still treated the worst, right? Like you don't even move up from all that sacrifice.
It's the whole like the trap of being model minorities, or that. Yeah, this is like we've seen this a lot in human society. Cool. I'm definitely stoked about sacrifice after Strauss's pitch. I think that's a really strong one, and that can bring in ideas of austerity and this like, as he said as well, like a seed for the rebellion stuff that we were talking about in the previous section.
You can also societies oftentimes can correctly identify what the other people have, like what some portions of society that are problematic have done wrong, but then they use the exact same tools to like reverse the position and keep it equally wrong. And I think that this idea of like sacrifice can definitely be turned around, where like whoever's in power can still demand it from the other half. Yeah,
once they take power back from them, they're like, now it's your turn to sacrifice everything. See how you like it.
Yeah, we've always been at war with East Asia.
So, Andy, I haven't heard your thoughts. How's your buy-in here?
I've been really enjoying everybody's framing. It's really lovely. So I keep thinking about hatred.
Ooh.
I love the discussions that happen on this particular topic because it's just like I'm really into obedience. Or like, I've been thinking about hatred, like it's a
So-
new fragrance. or
Pitch us.
something.
Yeah. So I don't, in fact, feel the need to like pitch it as a thing that is held sacred. I feel like it's inherently present in this idea of sacrifice and sacrifice being worn thin. And I also think that it's inherently present when we think about some of the deeply like toxic examples and like the monolithic way strength is so often pitched and the lenses that we have on it. So I don't need hatred to be a thing. I see it being present everywhere inherently.
I
So
think
are you doing the same Andrew like kung fu flip of like, haha, I'm gonna get hatred in there no matter what because you just added strength and sacrifice, and that strength plus sacrifice equals hatred.
Yep.
also it
that's
is
where I'm at.
a powerful motif in every war story. It's a force you have to fight against because you're not just fighting an enemy, you're fighting your own hatreds.
Yeah, the like darker sides of yourself.
You know what? What if we just underline 3? What are you gonna do then?
We're breaking the rules.
That's
by God.
right.
You can brackets hatred.
How you folks feeling?
I feel
feeling
really
like-
great. Go ahead.
I'm feeling like picking 2 is important because acts of selection are artistic acts and that we should have direction because as we pick more things, the less each one means. So, and for me as the MC, it's really nice to have a clear kind of thematic lens to be working with. So that would be my request to y'all. I am stoked about all of these things, and we can, like, any of these could work for the stuff we have described already,
Mhm.
right? It's about what we want to emphasize. It's about making a selection about what you
Yeah.
find interesting.
If I love them as well, and I think in my head, if I were to split them, I would feel that sacrifice was more of a societal ill, and that hatred is more of a personal ill. Like, not that hatred isn't societal, and not that sacrifice isn't personal, but when we look at the big, where we're going to see those ills on screen, like
Yeah,
where
like how they play out.
I see hatred as like a very like between our characters and like the things that we feel and say to each other, and so sacrifice being something of the things we see happening around us, and we may be sacrificing, but frankly, as player characters in a game that's forged by the dark, we have lots of like stress and powers and things, right? Like we have lots of mechanical ways to be awesome, but the world as a whole doesn't have those things.
And looking ahead, so this is what is held to be sacred. Later, we will ask y'all, the players, how do we transgress against that which is sacred? So the player characters are inherently transgressive against all of the society's kind of social mores, and also embody the things from this next section about what humanity was forced to give up. So we are inherently like an inversion of this horrible society that we live in, which is part of why we are like the beacons of hope for it. So we will, like, these things might impact our characters and we might engage with them, but there is a way in which we also are counterpoints to them and fight against these things. So if we want to fight against hatred, or if we want to fight against this idea of like this toxic idea of strength, for example, or, you know.
I really want to fight against strength.
I do too.
Like it's a thing that I was like, because
I'm super into this.
Because I am, you know, very much a product of toxic masculinity, and like to me,
I was gonna draw that connection of like, yeah, so it's about masculine, like completion of masculinity and strength, right?
Exactly. And like for me, that's like an important thing to fight. Like this is a thing that I care about a lot.
I mean, I was gonna inject that color into it no matter what. So, absolutely.
So given that we are going to transgress against these things,
I'm interested to see sacrifice be positioned as the other thing that, like, there's a way in which the characters like don't have to give things up or are able to like.
I think The Last Jedi actually posited that very well, and I think we might see some of that where the first premise of most war movies is like, oh, why don't you die to save other people, and maybe us caring for each other and rescuing each other is a big deal about that. Right?
Yeah, that you're not willing to pay that cost for and not out of like cowardice or for all these things you might be accused of, but for like there's like a good reason why. I would find that really interesting to explore personally. So
I think we have lots of nodding heads.
Yeah.
Andy, are you feeling it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's rock it. Next. Oh, am I back up? Is Andy back up? Who's the reader?
I think
Who follows me? I think it's Andy.
Hi. Great. Where are we going? This is.
What were we forced to give up?
Oh, yeah. What was humanity forced to give up? Choose one or two. Community, bodies, intimacy, emotion, gender, growth, comfort, hope.
Man, hope just feels like such a punch. Whenever I read hope, I'm like,
That's why it's at the end of the list too, is to just be the like hard period at the end of
it is. It's just like, I don't know if I could play a game where we give up hope. I mean, I know we as the characters won't have.
Society has given up hope, right?
Society
it's the whole idea of like the war is endless. They don't expect to ever win it. They don't expect society to ever change. That this is what life is now. We are in this place, fighting these leviathans forever.
And I just said, you know, this sounds really heavy, but I can also envision tangible ways in which you give up hope. Things where you cut yourself off from potential futures.
Yep, as a way of coping with trauma and bad things happening, and you know, like everyone of my generation just being like, cool, I'm never going to retire or own a house. You know, like harsh realities coming in, right? People stop looking for things that are good.
Can I pitch growth and comfort? Because again, I'm going to go back to, if we have an isolated city-state, numbers expanding is hard and bad. And as a society, if you
we just can only support X number of people. And
IFT. Yeah.
And also, if resources are limited, comfort becomes a thing that many people have to give up. Like, even if we have comfort as the pilots because we're special or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, as a society, everybody has a modicum of comfort.
And then it can be comfort, but then also comforts with an S, like nice little things like tea, for example.
Yeah.
Like not having those little things that make you feel human again.
Yep. And that is very fitting in with any kind of sort of military state, right? Where you have where you have like this, like if you're in this martial law state, it's super believable, common that, you know, that the food is rationed, and you know,
there are all kinds of austerity measures.
Yeah, there's all these austerity measures, and even to the idea of strength being super ignoble. That not only are the austerity measures, but breaking them is seen as like a moral transgression. Like enjoying your wonderful tea that someone just gave you is like a sign of weak character and being a horrible person.
I grew up in the shit, so you should live in the shit too.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, those follow really directly from a lot of our previous choices.
Yeah. And growth seems like a really tangible thing. That's the idea of like, you're limited on how many children you can have, and people aren't allowed. People from the outside the fortress aren't allowed. Like immigration is a hugely contentious thing. Like people who want to come in.
Yeah, like if refugees show up who are somehow still alive out there, do we take them in? Also, like growth on a personal level, like that we have all been if we're going to talk about toxic masculinity, talk about how it stunts people's growth in terms of like their emotional intelligence or their ability to connect with others, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And all that is seen as virtue of like sticking to your station and doing your job, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to grow. You're supposed to just keep being that cog in the wheel, in the machine that keeps doing what needs to be done for everyone else. I love it. So good. I'm really excited about both of those. I also have Girl Scout s'mores right here that I'm really excited about too.
Andy, you got anything for us?
The only counterpoint I would offer, and it is a very quiet one because I feel excellent about growth and comfort, is growth and intimacy.
To my mind, intimacy starts touching on stuff like the crowdedness of a compressed space, right? Where it's just like, I can't really, I mean, also toxic masculinity, of course, but like I can't talk about stuff that's going on with me because other people will hear, and I don't know if I can trust them not to like rat me out. Or
I have an idea for intimacy that is stolen from Shasha's game about filing giant mechas. And in Shasha's game, which we've also seen in other mediums, part of piloting these machines involves having like a mental link and sharing parts of yourself with somebody that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise share. And in terms of how to like pervert this idea, I like very much the notion that piloting these engines in some way lays bare our feelings, and that there's some very evident way of expressing intimate feelings that are supposed to be kept in and supposed to be, because I know we're going to transgress against these. And when I think about transgressing against that, like I can see that like by the very nature of our job, we're going to break those rules of containing your feelings.
I think we've all stated some good points, and now it's time to pick two. So we got votes.
Great. So one is growth. Yeah.
I feel like we're all pretty solid on growth, so it's a good place to start.
Growth is very good.
Humanity has given up growing in all of its various meanings. And then our front runners were like comfort and intimacy.
Okay.
I'm still fond of hope. I'm just going to leave it out there.
Hope is always a good one, certainly.
Yeah.
To my mind, hope is really like how I characterized it earlier. It's just about like everyone accepting what is happening as the status quo that will continue forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that growth and hope go together very naturally in that way.
Well, and hope being something that we've given up on strikes me as one of the first things that is completely ingrained at all levels. Whereas a lot of the other things we've talked about are these virtues that we ascribe as, I can see very much coming down as like a top down, like this is what you should do. Like the powers that be dictate these things and everyone accepts them. But giving up hope strikes me as something that's just like, this is
it's from the bottom up even, right?
Exactly. Like it's not even told to give up hope. It's just, that's just your reality, right? You just don't.
Nothing has shown you that hope is possible or would mean anything or matters. Yeah.
Let's do hope.
Okay.
Yes.
That reaction is everything I could have hoped for.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah. Let's do it. All right.
So Sean, I think you're up for why only we can be pilots.
Yeah.
So this is where we start talking. This is where the conversation shifts from talking about like the broader like antagonism and the society that we live in, which is also part of the antagonism, to you all and like what your deal is.
Yeah. Why only we can be pilots? Is it because we are doomed volunteers? We have been elevated by the authorities. We are vat grown. We are chosen by the engines. I know. We are changed by the leviathans, or our drive and ambition. And this is just a select one.
Yes.
It's going to be hard. I want to rule. There's one I don't like in this case.
Which one's that?
And that's the first time I'm going to do it. I don't want to be doomed volunteers. I really don't want to be like the people who said, we'll try, right? Like I want to be as much a victim of our society as everybody else. Even though we're exceptional in that we can pilot engines, I don't want to be the people who just like, we're plucky old, just think everything will be fine.
Or like we're conscripted into this, or
like,
there are lots of ways for doomed volunteers to be framed, but you're not interested in them, so that's fine. I'm more than happy to have people just cut things off the list. That makes it a lot easier to choose.
Yeah, I saw Strash get really excited by Chosen by the Engines, so
it's a traditional trope in this genre. So it's like, well, clearly that one, but that also is the thing that says, so do you folks have any other ones? Because like maybe playing to the trope, I don't know. I'm willing to hear other things. That's my pick. That's the easy one.
I really enjoy the other side of the coin to that one, which is changed by the leviathans.
that's the one that struck me the most.
And so the leviathans are these mountainous perversions of nature that have been summoned or brought forth or whatever by ancient gods,
right?
And that those somehow change you, and that in being changed by them, now you can pilot the engines and make them stuff.
And that fits really well with our notion that the engines and the leviathans are very closely interlinked, right? That we've had some exposure. I will throw out just for instance, a possible idea that most people who ever encounter the leviathans in any kind of proximity are just utterly destroyed by it. There are the rare few, however, who have survived, and their physiology has been changed by that. They, you know, their skin has changed to stone. They're you know, they vibrate with psychic energy. You know, something about them that's just like wildly different than people. And we are those sort of very changed. And maybe it's not a super physical thing. Maybe it's not super physically obvious, but that like being in that, it's like it's virtually impossible to be in that space between safe and utterly destroyed. And we were sort of somehow amazingly in that very narrow band.
Like, didn't immediately like lose our sanity or whatever else, right? Like,
right. It's sort of the eye of the storm in a way, because I think like perhaps if I think about nuclear fallout and the horrors there, is that you have like the physical destruction, and then you have all the radiation, and like this idea that maybe somehow right on the cusp of that, there's this weird space where instead of having radiation sickness and poisoning, and instead of instantly destroyed, you know,
it's sounding like they're
God radiation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little
version, there's
gamma.
like Leviathan sickness is a thing.
Yeah,
and that's
Yes,
part of
it
maybe
is.
why like people aren't allowed into the city, because it's like, oh, they might have
right. And I think
just
technically
die
we
or
might
whatever.
be even Leviathan sick, but we are the ones that
it like interacts with your physiology in this different way.
Instead of making us weaker, it makes us stronger. Or instead of it having the or maybe we do have the debilitating effects. I mean, maybe we're not any better off, but
and also that it doesn't make you stronger in a conventional way too, right? That y'all are seen as sick and therefore shouldn't be strong, but you are somehow.
I like that a lot, actually.
The only thing that I would like to pull back is maybe if we could reduce the level of the change. Like, I'm not super into the whole like, yeah, we're not human. Like, even if it can be that like the beast that we're fighting is a 9-eyed, 400-foot tall tiger thing, then maybe somebody who gets hit by its radiation sickness may develop like cat traits or something. It's very anime. But you know, at the same time, like, but yeah, like many people will like warp change, their bodies will like get half shifted, like these diseases might even be progressive. So
or it like turns them back into it, like it returns them to the earth, right? Like they dissolve into soil or become plants or like turn into cats, or like they literally like turn into an animal.
Right.
And it's like the world is being reclaimed by
and it's it's these ancient gods reawoken. So yeah, I like that idea a lot. And Josh, I totally agree. I was sort of going to a big extreme of like your skin tone's of stone. I like the subtler touch where there's a signature. You're like, oh, all these people have the
like people can tell when they look at you, and that maybe when you transcend, which we'll get to later, but like when you activate your like magical powers, maybe that's when you really go full on and like have like stone skin or whatever else, because that only is like a brief flash, and then you go back to just being like, oh, they just have like really weird pale eyes, and like
they've got really brittle fingernails.
Yeah, so I think there's room for the extreme instance existing as a brief phenomena, and then the like low level background stuff.
Leviathan sickness is my new favorite thing.
Yeah,
I'm stoked on that. So
it sounds like we're pretty excited about Changed by the Leviathan. I feel like that's a gimme.
And I like this like secondary idea that I'm now getting of like, cool, yeah, the big Titanic, like the Leviathans come out and like in a very Princess Mononoke and the Forest God way, they like leave footprint in their footprints. There are all these like weird things that happen that are like the ancient, like like the antediluvian nature stuff returning to the world. And that we view this as like perverse and strange, but it's just like the world as it once was in this weird mythological time. So there's going to be all this weird flora and fauna that's out in the world now as it's like reclaiming the planet.
Yeah.
If folks are into that.
Oh yeah.
Maybe starting to do some of that stuff. Okay, cool. So we're done that column. We can move on to roles, after which we will pick playbooks for each of you, and then we'll keep going through the lists. So I can read the roles out.
Yeah.
And we pretty much come full circle or whatever. Anyways, so the roles are, and each character or each player can choose one or two. And Following this, where'd it go? Okay, it's not in this version for some reason. Anyways, the next step after this is that y'all will pick playbooks based on the roles that you have chosen. And so the roles are Ace Pilot, Insubordinate Rebel, Weary Mechanic, Civilian, Troubled Captain, Rejected Candidate, Press-Ganged Convict, Forbidden Lover, or Naive Idealist. And so you could be a naive idealist who is the troubled captain or who is a rejected candidate, for example. You can pair them up in ways that you find interesting, or you can just pick one.
I'm very attracted to Press-Gang Convict.
Yeah.
I just want
Awesome.
I just want to be already on the wrong side of things.
I love that you were like, I don't want to be doomed volunteers. And then you pick the one that is like, you were basically exactly that.
Yes, you're
But
right.
it's personal.
It's personal. Maybe
So
I was
good.
secretly vying to be the only one.
Yeah, you just
although
wanted
everyone else.
the edgelord, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely.
I'm so enthusiastic about you picking that. I just found that pairing of choices
You're
really funny.
totally right. Yes, Luke.
Cool.
I totally want to be special. So
Yeah.
sweet. We're all special. See, that's a great thing. Is we're all special in this.
Yeah, I am really on about the weary mechanic.
Yep.
Do you got anything else?
I have been a weary mechanic in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know yet. I'd love to hear if everybody else has other things like
Yeah, I
Starsh.
was
Where you at?
gonna pick another thing after.
I am totally at Insubordinate Rebel, who is also an ace pilot.
Yes, you are.
Oh my God, Strash! Why didn't they just Andrew? Why didn't you just write Strash? And it was two options, and it was those two.
Yeah, Strush, parentheses. It's this,
Insubordinate
good.
Rebel, Ace Pilot. That's
Clearly.
why they're together. It's why they're right next to each other.
that's like such a classic trope, right? The like Maverick.
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
a great one.
Great. This is great.
So we already know that we have some like shit kid who's really good at flying these or piloting these things
Yep.
and doesn't ever do what he or she or they or whatever is told. We know that that's Strush's character.
Yes.
So good.
And so we can start framing around this context
Mhm.
because we also have a weary mechanic, and I can only imagine why your job might be harder with some flying off the handle rogue pilot getting their shit wrecked all the time.
Well, I very much want to frame being a convict around one of two things. One of them is being the illicit lover, perhaps having a child with, in this whole very physical, tangible notion of growth,
Mhm.
being the forbidden lover of somebody who is very important, and
Yes.
therefore,
Excellent.
or being a captain who failed in some horrible way and has sort of been recalled to duty because, again, we're needed. And both of those are things.
Right, like you served in a different branch and fucked up, and now they're like, cool, yeah, you can be in charge of this unit, like Suicide Squad, basically.
Right. This idea that I was failed in some horrible way as a captain, but I've been re-put duty because we're the only ones who pilot these things.
Yeah, I want you to be the captain because I want to be a civilian.
I don't know that me being a forbidden lover would prevent you from being a civilian, but if you want me to be the captain, what do you think is that dynamic between the captain and civilian that you're excited about?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking about like this grumpy mechanic who does not inherently have any idea what mumbo jumbo you're talking about when you start throwing around acronyms.
Like
Mhm.
military jargon and stuff.
Yeah, like, and does not care about like you give orders, and that's great. I'm working.
Nice.
So I'm more interested in that because it points to our interactions
Mhm.
between the characters versus the idea of a forbidden lover, which doesn't tell me as much about how I know your character.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think that's I think the reason why I'm excited about that. And also, I want you to deal with trying to hurt Strash's character, not me.
Sean,
Yes.
what if you were a troubled captain and a forbidden lover?
That's certainly possible.
Who could have conveniently been left outside the gates to encounter one of these god beasts, and they thought that you would just get sick and die, but you turned out to be resilient.
Damn, Strush with the strong pitch.
Yeah, that's so
Right.
good.
I want to be a forbidden lover if if one of two things is exciting to people. One of us were lovers, or two, whoever I was a lover with is integral and interesting to
some like
other two of you. Like, I don't want to have like, there's Sean's pet NPC that only Sean interacts with. So I'm totally happy that we could have been lovers, and perhaps I bore a child, and that's why I'm the forbidden one. Or that, again, it's an NPC that we all have, or at least one of you has, like, that there's a triangle there.
That's pretty old for magical girl genre.
That's okay. You know what, Sean, you could sign me up for being your character's former lover.
Cool.
If that's the thing that feels good to you.
That feels great to me. I mean, it'll make it much more impactful in the game, and it will give us. So then we have these two weird points of interaction, which is I'm the captain, barking orders that I expect you to respect, presumably, maybe.
But there's like a relationship history that complicates it, and then also you have this insubordinate shit kid as your other member of your.
This is really good. Yeah. So I just got unpress ganged, but
there's a reason that you can't just be the captain. You're always the troubled captain.
Yes, I'm always the troubled captain.
You're not allowed to not be that.
Now, in terms of power structures, I don't think this would be an issue, but I throw out one possible thing, which is just we're playing in a war scenario. We're playing we're trying to flip the paradigm of that war scenario in terms of we're not honoring the traditional things that are honored, right? Like we're analyzing how those things are harmful, but nevertheless, there may very well be times when we fall into those sort of old tropes of like hierarchy and leadership and strength, and I'm the boss and blah blah blah. And I think those things will be really like fun to play off. And like when I try to bark a command and like you either follow it or you don't, but like maybe I'm really adamant about somebody following that command. Yeah. But I don't want to play that out if that's like, I don't want Sean telling me what to do. Like that doesn't strike me as fun at all. If
you can try telling me what to do, Captain.
I mean, Strash taking insubordinate rebel flags that he's interested in that play. I feel,
that's true. That's true. I wouldn't be doing you service if I didn't have somebody barking
without someone to rebel against.
Yeah, right.
Sean, I want at least one visit in the brig.
also, Sean, to be clear, being the captain is mostly about you being held responsible for everything that goes wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not really, you don't get any perks. It's all down.
No, I mean, yes. Yeah, let's do it.
Just like I regret this choice.
No, I love this choice. Should we're hitting about an hour and a half, which is about
I would love to take a break.
Slot, yeah.
An hour and a half, whoa.
I know.
I didn't even feel it. Just
I know. Whoosh. All right, cool. So we're gonna come back in about 5, and we'll see you all when we start figuring out how they keep us in line.
Never.
Let not be me.
Playbooks.